Welcome to the sixth tutorial of the beginner MERN Stack tutorial series. In the last video, we had set up the React application and it was displaying hello world from our code onto our browser. In the current video, let's go ahead and build the form component and then try to bring it into app.js and display it. So we'll remove this. And in the form component, we will say item detail form, and let's bring this component inside app.js. So we'll have to import it. Import form from and specify the path. Now the form component is given the name form, so we are going to embed it inside our app component. So let's check on the browser. It says item detail form. We are using a functional component and we first need to keep a track on the three values that we'll be taking as inputs. So let us create those values first. So we'll say const, we'll say name and set name, and we are going to use the useState hook here. Once we use useState, it is automatically imported here. Keep it to an empty string. Similarly, we need to have two more variables, and we have the names as quantity, and we'll call it set quantity, and this is a number, so we'll keep it as 0. Similarly, we'll have rate and set rate, and we'll keep it to 0. Let's write the code for a form here. And let's have a div which will contain a label, name, and below that we'll have an input tag. The input tag will have three properties. One will be name, and next will be value, and the value will be name here. So we'll say name, and we'll have a type property which will say text. We'll have an ID which will say name as well, and finally we'll have an onChange method which will keep a track of on the values that are being populated inside the input field. So onChange, right now we're keeping it blank, so we need to repeat this 3 times for 3 fields. Let's do that quickly. type is number. Similarly for rate, this is also a number. So for the onChange part, we'll have a arrow function which will contain e. We are going to use the target object and read the value that will be present inside this particular input field, and hence in the state as well. So we'll be using the set method of each variable, and we'll be updating the values when the user goes in and changes them in the input form. So we'll say that if this changes, then set the name property to whatever is present inside the input field. So we say e dot target dot value. So whenever this changes, it will update, or rather set the name variable to whatever is the target value of the event. So e here actually means event if you want to name it, or you can simply keep it e, it doesn't matter. So yeah, so we'll do this for the others as well quickly. Let's go and check in the browser. How does it appear? There seems to be some error. It says React component names must start with an uppercase letter. I think we have named our component in lowercase. That is the problem. So yeah, we need to make it uppercase here also, where we are exporting it. Refresh it. So we can see the 3 fields here. We also need a submit button which will send the data to our backend for the post operation. So we'll create a button. We'll create a div. Inside that we'll say button. We'll say add record, add item, and on click of the button, I want to trigger a function which will handle the events after the button is being clicked. So we'll say handle click. This is not defined yet, so we'll go above and define it. Just above return, and inside the function body itself, we will say const handle click, and we are going to use the fat arrow syntax. So this is, and we'll supply the event variable here, so that, and we'll say event dot prevent default. So the statement will prevent our default behavior of the form, which is to submit the data. Whenever someone invokes the handleClick method by clicking the button, we would want to see the values for our three variables in the console. So we will say console.log, and we'll say name, quantity, and rate. That's it. Let's head over to the browser and check if we are getting the expected result in the console. Let's refresh the page. So we'll say my name, we'll say 100, and we'll say 90. And let me bring up the console. So I'll say Ctrl+Shift+I, and the results will be visible in the browser console, not on our terminal, but on the browser console. So we'll clear this first, and now we'll say add item. So you can see it says my name and the respective quantity and rate values. Now what we want to do is we want to make a JSON object out of the above data and then send it to the backend for the purpose of adding it to the database. So we'll do that in the future videos. So see you in the next one.